welcome to Community Designs. I'm your host, Sophie Kneebone, and we are in the Baw Baw Shire today. I'm standing at the start of the Two Towns Trail, which is an 8-kilometre track that connects the town of Warragul to the town of Drouin. We're about to head up to the offices of the Baw Baw Shire, where I'm going to be talking to Matthew Cripps, who is involved in the development of this project. So let's head up. I'm sitting here with Matthew Cripps, who is the Director of Planning and Economic Development for the Baw Baw Shire. So Matthew, thank you for joining us today.
It's great to be here.
So tell us a little bit about the Shire and what your role is.
Okay, so Baw Baw Shire Council is a peri-urban municipality, so it's approximately 100 kilometres from Melbourne to the east, and entails 4,000 square kilometres of native or natural assets, including national park and state forest. But it has two key settlements or townships, being Drouin and Warragul, which are expanding at a rapid rate. The growth in those two towns is at about 2.3 to 2.5% per annum, and is one of the fastest regional growing centres in Victoria. My role takes in a bit of a diverse portfolio. I look after both the strategic planning, so managing the growth, through to dealing with statutory planning and the enforcement arm of our business, so local laws. So my team are out there often finding people and ensuring that we've got compliance with all of our local laws and rules.
Right. So it is such a rapidly growing area. What do you think it is that brings people to this area that makes it grow so quickly?
I think it's proximity to Melbourne. So we're about 30 kilometres from the fringe of Melbourne, and the offering of housing in the area is something a little bit more of your traditional quarter-acre block. So we're actually seeing subdivisions occur out here of 600 to 1,000 square metres in terms of allotment sizes. When you compare that with a lot of the growth areas of Melbourne, which are offering between 300 and 500 square metres, the community or the people who are actually relocating to Baw Baw are looking for a bit more land and space, and it's and also lifestyle. Some of the best schools are located out here, and we've got some wonderful infrastructure. Public hospital, even though that's we're hoping to see that be rebuilt or a new one be provided for our community. It's a great facility, and our community has some great infrastructure they can rely on. And we've got easy transport back to Melbourne. They're spined with both the regional rail, and we've also got the Monash or the Prince's Freeway, which connects both Warragul and Drouin back to Melbourne. You can be there off peak within an hour, which is great. And we're also an hour from the ski slopes of Mount Baw Baw, and an hour from the coastline. So it's actually quite a fantastic location, and we've got temperate weather. So it's a beautiful location. Primarily green right through the whole year, and we've got both Thomson Dam and a number of other water bodies here, which provides Melbourne its water security. So we have a high level of rainfall. So it's a beautiful location, and I think the people of Melbourne are now looking for a better quality of a lifestyle and bigger lots, and so it's bringing a lot of people out this way.
Yeah, you sold it very well. It sounds like paradise. It's green, rainfall,
it's a great place.
Yeah, sounds like it. What are some of the challenges you face in your role, in your kind of everyday work here in Baw Baw Shire? So
one of the big challenges has been around that growth. How do we actually provide for it? Baw Baw Shire Council, with the Metropolitan Planning Authority, recently undertook some work to rezone about 3,000 hectares of land around both Warragul and Drouin, and to support that growth. We're expecting 20,000 new dwellings to be built within those areas, and basically an extra 50,000 population we're expecting to move into the area over the next 20 years. In addition to that, the economy is another major focus for our team, and it's about how we ensure that there's opportunities for employment and for new jobs to be located in Baw Baw. And as part of that work, we've rezoned around 300 hectares of land for industrial and commercial activity. So they're two of the big challenges for us around the growth, and its infrastructure as well. So how do we ensure those lots can connect up to all of our basic services of sewer, water and power and so on.
So Matthew, tell us about the Two Towns Trail and how that came about, and what that means to the community.
The Two Towns Trail was a piece of infrastructure aimed at joining our two main towns of Warragul and Drouin, both in those growth areas. It's an 8-kilometre piece of infrastructure, a shared path which was aimed at encouraging connection between the two towns, but also to encourage people to be active and use it as a way of, I guess, dealing with health and well-being. The other important component of that is it's been seen as a key piece of infrastructure for our community, and a lot of our new subdivisions and the like are really being built around connectivity and how they actually integrate back to that Two Towns trail. So we've got subdivisions that are being built on the outskirts of Drouin and Warragul, which is really we're really focusing on how that permeability occurs of people movement, not only vehicle but people movement, and how we actually get them back moving and integrating with the Two Towns Trail. It's a lot about health and well-being and really ensuring that it's built in a natural environment which is quite beautiful to engage in, and it's quite I guess a reflection of our original neighbourhood character and the characteristics that people in Baw Baw hold dear in its I guess the changing rural dynamic to more of an urbanised environment.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and do you work with community groups on these kinds of projects? Is there any kind of arts involvement or anything like that that goes on with these kinds of things? There's
always community involvement, and the community are always highly engaged when we do key projects within the area. The Two Towns Trail did have a group we have a health and wellbeing committee, and they were part of the thinking around the project. But we also work with state government and federal government to look at how we could get their engagement to assist in the delivery of the project. Arts is always something that we are looking at embedding and really looking at how we can enhance locations and the interest. If you've got something that people want to go and look at, they'll engage with the space. And so we do have an local arts committee, and we've also got a local arts centre, which is I think one of the crown in the jewel of Baw Baw. It's a beautiful regional arts centre, and the group there actually works in looking at not necessarily the Two Towns Trail completely, but it's looking at how we embed art throughout all of the region, and when we do projects we try to ensure we embed some artistic element, whether it be something which is a stock standard piece of art in front, or whether it's actually subtly built into designs. We do look at trying to use art as a way of making a place more attractive, and particularly in the built form, so when people are experiencing the natural, they can also enjoy the actual built environment that's been provided for them.
How long does it take end to end to get a project like that happening? I mean, when does the planning start? What's that process like? And then when does it sort of officially open and start seeing people coming through?
Well, it's probably been a couple of years in the making. The need to engage with landowners, so we had a whole variety of land owners and interested parties, Vic Roads. We also had our water authorities involved in the area as well. So how do we actually work with those parties to allow the path to be constructed in the first place? What crossing points we're going to have to deal with, particularly around some of our waterways that also in certain parts of the project, whether they were enhancements or complications, that they're there and they were needed to be dealt with in terms of bridges and the like. So the actual scoping of the work, dealing with those other bodies and advocating for funding probably took in the order of around 18 months to 2 years. After that, the build was a shorter period, so 8 kilometres of path. That took probably another 12 months to get the works completed, and then shortly after that we've had the community quite eager to engage in that space and use it. The numbers have been increasing with our population, and Waterford Rise, which is one of our larger subdivisions that are currently under construction, is situated right on the path and taking full advantage of integrating their paths and networks and even open space back to that path, so that there's opportunities for their community to engage with that space as well.
Great. Sounds like you have to be a bit of a diplomat and be coordinating with a lot of different parties.
Yeah, it's not just a straight forward, we're just going to put a footpath in. There's a lot of different people interested and needing to be engaged to achieve that outcome.
Yeah. And how do you track the success of something like this? How do you track how many people are coming through?
So the Two Towns Trail has a couple of counters built into some gateway artwork.
Oh, right. Sneaky.
So we've picked up on a couple of your questions, I guess. So the artwork has got counters there so that when people move through, we can actually track the number of people that are moving up and down that path, and it's giving us a good indication of the increased popularity of the space. It's also meant that the community are actually asking for other path networks elsewhere, and so our community and council looking at what opportunities we have in other path networks outside of the two, I guess, main townships, and that's been built in, and the popularity of those are also increasing. So it's been a great. I think we're 30,000 to 40,000 plus movements on it annually, and that's increasing every year since it was open. So it's a great piece of infrastructure. It's something that we hope will be supportive of our community, but also be an attractor for other people to come out and utilise the path network itself. There are a couple of crossover points where you do need to engage with the road network, but apart from that, it's a great piece of infrastructure which is highly valued.
Yeah, fantastic, and a great place to walk your dog.
Definitely.
On the leash.
That's right.
It sounds like it was hugely successful, so congratulations.
Thank you.
And it's a beautiful trail. We've been looking at it. And the offices that we're sitting in now, I wanted to ask you, I know that these offices were redeveloped quite recently, and they were redeveloped from the old offices, but they were done in a particular style. Can you talk a little bit about that?
They were. This was our Baw Shire Council's original offices. I think they were built in the 70s, so it was actually quite a beige brick-looking structure. and council previously were based and we're here in Drouin. It's at the town centre itself. Our offices were primarily based in Warragul, and we have a civic office there. But because of the size, we had a whole lot of shop fronts that our offices were being, worked from. So the internal connectivity of our office staff were quite difficult, and it was quite fragmented. So council took the unusual step to look at how they could bring all of our staff together, but looking at how they can recycle existing buildings from the assets that council owns. They identified this site as being ideal, but it required a fair bit of work in terms of in getting it to current day standards. What was left of the building after the works commenced was the uprights, the concrete slab, and the laminated beams that we find throughout the building, but the remainder of the building was reclad and reconstructed. It was a build that only cost $3.6 million, so it was quite efficient in terms of expenditure. You look at some metropolitan counterparts spending in the order of $50 to $100 million for offices, and we've got a great outcome. We've also embedded a large number of sustainable outcomes with water collection for reuse. We also have, I think it's over 100 kilowatts of solar panels on the roof, which is really reducing our carbon footprint. I think when we're at the height of summer, we were actually putting power back into the grid. So it's been a really great investment by our council to minimise our carbon footprint. And it's also been about the location and integrating again around the Two Towns Trail. We've integrated our building on the edge of the Two Towns Trail, which means that we're connecting our presence back with our natural assets.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, you're a busy man, Matthew. I can tell you've got a lot on your plate. So thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really interesting to hear about the fantastic projects you're working on.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
We're standing in the offices of the Waterford Rise estate, which is a housing estate that sits right in the middle of the Two Towns Trail that we were in just before. So I'm here with Gary Tomasetti, who is a director of the Waterford Rise estate. Thanks for joining us, Gary.
Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about Waterford Rise?
Waterford Rise is an estate that we developed over a period of time. We're probably 40% of the way through on our block sales at this point in time. But back into the history, we bought 2 dairy farms, had the land rezoned, and once we got through the rezoning, we then started on master planning the estate. We had a dream in mind of what we were looking to create, and it was so that we could have levelled blocks for people to build on, because one of our major aims was to create an estate that people could afford to build on and be able to get the volume builders to do it, and they wanted level blocks to be able to do that. In our master planning, one of the things that we had to do was to ensure that all the roads actually ran up the hills. And if you can see Warrigal land, everything's hilly, there's nothing flat from that point of view. So that created us a little bit of a challenge. But at the end of the day, we worked it out with the use of our consultants and with the help of the Baw Baw Shire Council in listening to what we were wanting to do, because it was a little different than what had been done around here in the past. But it was certainly something that we thought was achievable, and with what we've been able to do and what you can see around the estate, I think that we're certainly achieving the aims that we set out to do. The Two Towns Trail went across the front of our estate, and it was just a paddock when it went through there. So what we decided was that with all the paths and walking paths and bike paths and those sorts of things throughout the estate, we had to have connectivity to it, which we've been able to do. And you will see when you get out and have a look where we've been able to connect down some of the park areas and that sort of thing. We've created ramps down, or we've joined into it, because we thought it was a big thing from our point of view. It gives people the ability to be able to walk into the central business district of Warrigal, because we're really only 1.5 kilometres away, and that sort of thing, so they can get down onto the Two Towns Trail and in they go.
Yeah, fantastic. Can you talk us a little bit more through the planning stages, particularly with the levelling of the land that you were saying earlier?
Yeah, well, once we achieved the road network, then what we looked at was that the reasons why we wanted the roads to run up and down the hills was so that the slopes of the blocks were across the blocks, not the length of the blocks. Because it's much easier to deal with the slope if you're talking about doing it on something from 12 to 18 metres rather than the depth of 35 metres. Much easier to deal with. Once we'd worked out how to do that, we then got to a situation of working out what our retaining walls should be. We use fully engineered retaining walls. They're constructed concrete with all the appropriate engineering requirements of mesh and all those sorts of things in them. All steel posts, so our retaining walls will be here for an awfully long time. We've changed our design a little bit on the way through. We've actually moved the retaining walls back to the block boundary, and all our blocks come fully fenced, and the fences are attached to the retaining walls so that they're stable. The wind doesn't blow them over, you don't end up with the problems of soft ground and those sorts of things.
One less headache for the buyer.
Correct, correct.
Yeah, fantastic. I was talking earlier with Matthew about how the Baw Baw Shire is such a fast growing area and how the population is growing so rapidly. Why do you think that is? What do you think brings people to this area?
Look, there's probably a number of things, but Warrigal's now on the fringe of the metropolitan area, and a few years ago there was lots of land available around the Officer, Pakenham region and that sort of thing. A lot of that now has been taken up, sort of thing. So, but affordability is probably the biggest thing at this point in time, as to why both Drouin and Warrigal are places that people seek to live. Our land is probably $100,000 a lot cheaper than what you can buy down in those areas down there. And the other thing that we provide, I guess, is that our average size lot's probably around the 600 square metre mark. If you want to buy a block of land down in the southeastern fringe, you're lucky if you can find 350 square metres, which makes a lot of difference when you're looking at building a house. If you want 25, 26 squares down there, you've got to go double storey. Double storey's dearer to build. So that's what we're looking to achieve, and I think that's why people are coming down here. The other thing that we're finding is that people are downsizing. A lot of our buyers are 55 plus, so they're looking at selling their houses in the metro area, coming out here. They can build a lovely new house, lovely place to live, and still have some cash in their pocket to enjoy their retirement going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. So you were saying before that the project is about 40% complete. What's the next few stages? What are they going to look like?
In many ways more of the same. We're currently in the stages of down over near those wetlands areas down there that we're selling down there and constructing down there. And once we come round further, a little bit further down there, then we'll come up to this back area up here and start developing. The lots will all be similar to what we've already designed. They'll all be benched, all appropriately retained, fenced, because that's our mandate of what we're looking to provide to our buyers. And right at the moment, the formula's working. Took us a fair while to get established, but we have now got an established reputation and that sort of thing, so people are more than happy to buy our blocks.
Yeah, right. Are there any particular challenges or even advantages to working around wetlands like this? I'm quite interested in that.
Well, all the wetlands in our estate, the main reason they're there is for drainage purposes and water quality. Sort of thing. This main wetland area down there doesn't only cater for the Waterford Rise estate, but all the areas to the north of us, up that gullieway. This wetland over here caters for this area down out this side of us. So that's the main reason why they were there. But we saw them as a feature. Obviously, it's all to do with vista and those sorts of things. If you can get down and live where you're looking out over a lovely open space area like that, and that just makes life feel a little bit more comfortable, I suppose, from that point of view. But we also made sure that we had walking trails right round them and that sort of thing. So not only the people that are living adjacent to the wetlands, but anybody that's living in the estate can get down and enjoy the amenity of those wetland areas.
Yeah, fantastic. And what do you think sets Waterford Rise apart from perhaps other estates that are springing up all around the place?
We probably believe that the benching aspect of it, the way that we've master planned it so that we have the roads running up and down the hills, so that we can create the best possible block that we can for the people to build on. That's what we see as our major advantage at this point in time. Plus, the other thing is that there are two things that people can't take away from us. One's our proximity to the freeway, and the other's our proximity to the CBD and the railway station. Unfortunately, it's a situation where a lot of the people that are coming to Warragul have to travel out of Warragul to work. So good access to the Drouin train system and good access to the freeway is very important, and we've got both of those.
Best of both worlds. You've got the beautiful bushlands and the wetlands and the two towns trail, but then it's easy to get to the city.
Correct.
Yeah, exactly. Gary, thank you so much for joining us today. It's been really interesting to hear about how this project is developing, and best of luck for the next few stages.
Good, thanks very much.
Thanks, Gary. Thanks for watching Community Designs here at the Baw Baw Shire. We'll see you next time.